Hello guys, and welcome to another Divinity Original Sin video. First of all, please forgive me. My voice, I've not been feeling too great the last few days, and I'm still not feeling that great right now, but I really want to push the rest of the physical party composition out as soon as possible because I want to get it all out around the sort of same time. So yeah, just forgive me. So this is the how to build a warrior two-handed inside of a four-man party based around physical damage. Gonna be covering lots of different things, some little tricks and stuff. So I'm sure something in the video will be maybe new knowledge to you or useful in your journey to saving Rivellon. So, the most common question is which race should I pick? Now, it depends on who is going to be inside of your party first and foremost, because there's classes that work better with different races. So you need to determine what classes you have. So in my case here, I have a necromancer, a summoner, ranger, and a two-handed. And then I need to establish which race works for each class. So for me, like, an elf makes the best necromancer. So that's one elf gone. I personally would go with elf as the summoner in this case. So that's the elves gone. I personally like Thane as my ranger, so it kind of leaves me with choice between, I don't know, beast, red prince, some custom character, or human. Now, I picked beast here just because it's part of the rules of the run, but if we're looking at optimization, I think a human would make the best with what I have available. Reason being is 5% crit and the crit modifier, and brings in courage, which isn't that major of a buff, but it can be helpful to get gear that you wouldn't be able to put on by using it outside of combat and using it and then just using the stats on an item to achieve the requirements. So in my case, I think a human would be the best, but if we're just looking at it from, just which is the best, again, we can look at the old familiar faces of an elf or Thane. Thane because of time warp and because of the crit modifications, and then the elf because of the damage increase from flesh sacrifice. But like I said, I think those suit better roles better. So I would say if you're just looking for the best, you go with elf or Thane. Or in my case, considering the other roles, a human would make the best human. Human would make the best human. Human would make the best warrior. So in terms of your attributes, you're going to be getting points into strength. This is going to be the stat that you should be maximizing. The other attributes like finesse and intelligence is just something that you're largely not going to be needing to put points in, so avoid at all costs. So you want to be increasing your damage as much as possible. Constitution is something that you can ignore because you just don't need it for any gear at all, and you're going to be using a two-handed. Constitution is not very important in this game. Memory, you would put points in and as when you need them, but because you're a warrior, you really won't be needing to put any points into it at any point. Wits will be your secondary attribute. So firstly, you're going strength. Once you've maximized your strength, you'll be putting points into wits. Crit chance is always nice, but all the other stuff isn't really that important. Excluding accuracy, of course, but yeah, we'll get onto that in a little bit. Now, something that I see that other people talk about, and I fully disagree with it. It is that people talk about getting grasp of the starved on your Inquisitor character, and I have always like been against this. I've always been against the idea of getting stuff that requires you to split your stats, or unless it like makes sense to do so. So yeah, some people would recommend like on a build like this to use grasp of the starved. Just don't. You shouldn't be splitting your attributes at all. You want to maximize your damage. You want to be really, 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 really good at something rather than being mediocre at two things. So obviously, if you're building like this, you have no intelligence. So using grasp of the starved is a complete waste of time. And like I said, you shouldn't be splitting your attributes anyway. So if you see people recommending that, I would fully ignore that advice. You've got all the skills and the builds you need like right here. Use your skills. You use a strength based weapon, and then you go to town. You don't need to be using grasp of the starved. Though I would say, having said this, at some points during the game, like perhaps you could entertain the idea of corpse explosion. That is like the only thing that you could possibly entertain with this build. And the reason why I would say that is because it's one AP, it's AoE. So sometimes with your build, you might have the odd AP, and then it would make sense to do so. And the damage kind of makes more sense per AP to be doing so. So that's the only exception I could possibly make at certain times, but as you can see at this moment, I don't even use it here. The school skills that you should be looking to achieve. So like with everything, you will be putting points into wherever to meet requirements for other skills and stuff that you want. Though personally, as a warrior, you really don't need to be doing so. Your primary job is to do damage. Utility is not a major thing here. You are just looking to slaughter the enemies. So what we're going to look at instead is which school stats to prioritize in order to maximize your damage. Now this is one of the only builds that you're going to really be doing this. So a lot of people will tell you to go warfare first and two-handed second. Now, I'm a massive advocate for enrage. Enrage means 100% chance to crit. Now, if we're critting 100% of the time, two-handed is what you should be prioritizing before warfare. This will lead to more damage. So the enrage build, you go two-handed maximize first, and then second you maximize warfare, and then scoundrel. But as if you ever get to that point. Obviously you'll be looking to put 1 point into scoundrel for adrenaline, everybody loves adrenaline, everybody wants it, but pretty much everything else just falls into the warfare path. So you don't really need to be putting points here and there. You don't need Ereford, you don't need Geomancer, you don't really need Necromancer. Polymorph, I would say, was even optional. You don't necessarily need Skin Graft, but in my case here, as you can see, we got the 3 points in Polymorph and we got the memory slots available. Why not? Why not take on Skin Graft? But yeah, it's very, very simple in the way you build the warrior. Very little complication. So remember, two-handed first, warfare, you take enrage, you carry enrage. So if we just take a quick look at the gear itself here, what you're going to be looking at in getting stats on pieces of gear, you're going to be looking for strength, you're going to be looking for crit chance, you're going to be looking for two-handed, you're going to be looking for warfare and scoundrel. Anything else is pretty redundant. So it is really simple. So as you can see here, it's just the way the items come. This is probably be like the best that you can get. Like you got 2 strength, you got 2 warfare, you got scoundrel. Yes, there happens to be Hydro and Ereford on it, but with the way the gear works, you can't get an item that has like 3 or 4 warfare and 2 scoundrel. It just doesn't work like that. So this is gonna be like the best helm you could ask for at this stage. Again, as you can see with this piece, high strength, there's some warfare, there's polymorph on it. There's a rune slot here. We got some strength, two-handed, crit chance. With the belts, this is something that you can get from the well, as long as you're level 9. With belt pieces, you should be looking to get plus two-handed on it, because that's the only thing that increases your damage on belt items, and obviously you want crit chance as well. Those are the 2 main things that you're going to be wanting. Boots, got some strength, and again, two-handed. Comes with the enrage skill, saves the memory slots. You got Vordalamis, absolutely amazing weapon. Warfare, strength, again, all that good stuff. It comes with challenge. Neck piece, I'm pretty sure you could pick up a better neck piece, like a divine one, but yeah, I spent long enough doing this, honestly. I mean, this is a perfectly good option. Strength and polymorph on it. Again, rune slots. The rings, the important stats are the warfare and the scoundrel, and again here. And then the leg piece comes with some warfare, and again a rune slot again. Again, there might be some better options here and there, but I've accommodated all my characters. Just bear that in mind as I've made this character. So the talent points, what should you be looking to do with your build? With the warrior, there is a number of talents that is useful, some more important than others. But I would say pretty much for any build in the game, almost any build in the game, Glass Cannon is probably your first point of action. It gives you 6 AP. As long as you're putting out high enough damage to crowd control and kill enemies, the downside to Glass Cannon shouldn't really ever come into effect. But sometimes, you know, things don't go so smoothly. So I would always be looking at the likes of Glass Cannon as a first talent, followed by Executioner. Again, what you're doing is you're maximizing your AP. You get max AP. Executioner gives you an extra 2 AP. Everything is geared towards doing more damage. You're level 8. Again, you could entertain a number of things. Water Rush gives you the extra talents. Again, as long as you're below 50%. So really, you want to be avoiding Necromancer so you don't heal as you do damage to health pools. But the extra AP here and there can be helpful at times. Fourth talent point, we'd be looking at it depending at the stage in the game. If you need the memory slots, it would make sense for mnemonic and then put in those 3 points into strength instead. If that's not really an option, all skilled is a very good option. Hothead typically is a choice for people, but because of the way that I would look to use the warrior, it wouldn't really work out here. Water Rush and Hothead conflict, but if you're using Water Rush, looking to get 1 HP and go with Death Wish, you'll never need Hothead. So it becomes a redundant talent if you're building and playing this way. So yeah, I would look at Glass Cannon, Executioner, Water Rush, depending on the game state at the time. But as you can see here and now, we're going with the all skilled up. Every strength is maxed out, so going extra attribute points is a waste of time. Or almost a waste of time. And then if we're looking at a fifth talent choice, we could look at... we could look at... There's not really that great of an option. I just want to put out there that I don't consider using the likes of 5-star Diner just because they're absolutely broken. But they are broken talent. That is a broken talent, I would say. But I just want you guys to know that I don't consider them in my options for my builds. But yeah, if you want to run 5-star Diner here, feel free to, of course. Looking at some of these other talents, like they're a little bit of a trap that people tend to fall for, and if you really consider it, they're not that great. Like even at one point I would have went for a couple of these talents that I'm about to talk about. So if you look at Living Armor adds 35% of all healing you receive by skills and consumables, which sounds fantastic on paper, and it is. In a way, it does sound great. But in order for this to work, you'll want Necromancer, you'll want Vampiric Hunger. You need to be damaging health pools. But I see it as a trap. Not only because of the way that I build and it conflicts with that build, but the idea and the most important things in this game is to deal as much damage as humanly possible and kill and crowd control. Now, if you're doing those things, you're not going to be taking sufficient damage. Hence why it's a bit of a trap. There is another bit of a trap. Opportunist. Now, what does this do? It gives you a chance of a free attack. Now, again, on paper this sounds great inside of a meta build, but if we think about the rules are deal as much damage as possible, crowd control, and kill. Now, Opportunist only works if your enemies are moving, which is something that you do not want and shouldn't really be happening. So if those things are being done correctly, Opportunist never comes into effect. And there's even less of a reason to be using it in the later game because a lot of the enemies tend to have jump skills. So they're not going to be moving out of your your radius to eat the opportunist attacks anyway. So this is the biggest trap I've ever seen. Like, unfortunately, again, I like it on paper, sounds great, but breaking it down, it's pretty useless. So yeah, if you're at this point in the game where you can get a 5th talent point, you go with Glass Cannon, you go with Executioner, you go with War Skilled Up, you go with Water Rush. We have Picture of Health from the leggings, but that's pretty much a minor thing. But some of the ones, the last one you could consider Far Out Man. Now I know that sounds crazy, but you could consider it because it adds to the distance of your pull rushes. It does add to your blitz attack. So that is something that can be considered. Again, it's a very, very minor talent, but you know, it is something to consider. But everything else really here is defensive, or just doesn't really have much of a use at this moment in time. But during the game, like even bigger and better could be an option at times. It really just depends at the stage in the game you're at. You know, if you don't need the memory points, but some of these aren't cutting it, maybe bigger and better is a better option at some point. But as long as you've got like the main core of the Glass Cannon, Executioner. I mean, I suppose Water Rush for me would be part of the core. But you got these 3, which are all adding AP to your turn. You know, as long as you got those main ones, you know, you're golden. You're in a good space, I would say. So the skills, I mean, again, you're very, very, very limited to what you actually need as a 2-handed warrior. In fact, you get a lot of the skills that you're going to be using throughout the entirety of the game at the beginning, or near enough the beginning, which is cool. So like some of your core skills, you have your Phoenix Dive. So you have your 1 jump. You can go with Phoenix Dive, you can go with Cloak and Dagger in the early game if you really want the jump. But you just want 1 just in case to get you around. You don't really need more than that. Challenge you pick up later. Enrage, like I've already touched upon. This is something that you're going to be using from level 4. Thick of the Fight is mostly here because I have nothing else to use. I have nothing else to really fill the slots. And at times, having Thick of the Fight at the beginning of combat makes sense. It makes sense. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Then you have the core skills. You have your Battering Ram, your Battle Stomp, Crippling Blow, Blitz Attack, Whirlwind, Onslaughts. Those you're going to be using pretty regularly throughout the game. Skin Graft, like I touched upon, was optional, but perfectly acceptable to have something like this. Bullhorns, I used to rank this a lot higher, but it really depends on your point of view. If fights are ending within 1 round, it kind of loses its great value, but I can't take away from what it can do in longer fights. So this is again a staple for me, or has been a staple throughout the run. I mean, this is just because of Beast, but we have the Petrifying Touch, which plays a very, very little role in this game as a 2-handed warrior, and same with the Blinding Squall. So the best way to utilize your skills is as follows. So Phoenix Dive, I mean, I don't really think there's much to be said about it. a lot of what makes sense depends on the circumstances in the fight. Sometimes it's going to make sense to jump at the beginning. Sometimes you won't need to. Sometimes you can get involved in a fight by using bull rush to actually do damage, or blitz attack, for example. It really depends, but for the most part, you should be positioned well at the beginning in order not to need the Phoenix dive. But, you know, if you have, say, 7 AP, for example, it will make sense to the Phoenix dive in, because that will keep you at a nice flat 6 AP to do as much damage as possible. With challenge, there's a few things that you need to sort of be aware of. It's absolutely safe to be using. You can use this right before the death blow, so you're never kind of like worried about losing the challenge itself, and it gives you 2 turns, which is a huge amount of time. Some things just to bear in mind with challenge though is that it does override current challenges, so just be mindful if somebody already has a challenge on that target. And the other thing to be wary of is decaying, because if you're decaying and you win a challenge, you will destroy yourself. Enrage, I don't think there's too much to say about enrage. Just be picking it up early and be putting your points into two-handed. That's gonna maximize your damage. Obviously, just gotta be wary that it's gonna mute you. So the likes of adrenaline and your jump skills, they're gonna be affected by this. So sometimes, if you're, like I said, if you're, you know, your glass cannon and you're already at the enemy's mercy, it will make sense to just strike thirst without enrage. Use the AP up, then use your adrenaline. And use your adrenaline, and yeah, and then go enrage so you can maximize your damage. Do I seriously not have it up? Go like that, who cares? So thick of the fight. Thick of the fight is something that it doesn't really justify the 2 memory points. If you're putting 2 points into memory for this, it's not worth using. It's not worth using if you're using it during combat either. The only reason why I have it currently on the bar is simply because I'm using it before the combat begins. Use it before the combat begins, and because I'm not putting points into memory. So this means I'm not reducing my damage for it. See what I mean? So we have 0 points in memory. We have the extra slots because of the level, so I can put it in at like no cost. It's not a wonderful buff for a skill user, but like I said, if it costs me no memory, if I'm doing it before combat, I can increase my damage a little bit. Why not? It makes sense to do so. But yeah, I don't recommend this if it requires you to put points in memory for it, nor do I recommend using this during combat itself, really. Battering ram, like I find during my runs that I wouldn't necessarily always be running battering ram, because fights would tend to end within a round anyway, and the main crowd control is the battle stomp. Battle stomp is pretty much always gonna overcome battering ram. So it's basically a secondary CC for the most part, and also you've got your teammates to be doing crowd control as well, so you don't need that much in that department. But sometimes it can be useful if your fights are extending a little bit longer than the one round or so. Your battering ram's gonna have a place. But the really nice thing about this is that it is crowd control, and it does grant you mobility at the same time. Alright, I think he's taking this a little bit too Alright, I didn't mean to start this fight. This wasn't part of the video. Anyway, this one, but just grant him a challenge. Grant him a challenge. Go on. Why not? Thick of the fight. Enrage. Well, I didn't want things to end for you this way, my friend, but that was one hell of a death. Rest in peace in the comments for Crandy Hubert. I was just trying to battering ram as an example. Damn. Anyway, back to it. Crippling Blow, for me, is a little bit the same with the battering ram. I would like dance between using it and not using it at the very early stages of the game. I mean, very, very early. But this is like really great skill, because, well, for a number of reasons. It's AoE, it hits harder than your basic attack, and then really soft crowd control as well. But the thing that I really like about it is when you have a summoner, they use totems. You can't, let's say for example, you are in a fight, you can't kill the enemy with your two-handed warrior, but you put the totem right on top of the enemy, and then you can just attack the totem with the crippling blow. You'll kill the totem and you'll deal damage to the enemy within this circle. So say the totem's here, the enemy's here, you hit the totem, you're going to be doing DPS to the enemy, but also get the kill for the execution with your crippling blow. So this is like the one skill that you have as a two-handed warrior that can attack like friendly totems. Everything else is just enemy focused. So that is one thing that I really like about Crippling Blow. Whirlwind, pretty self-explanatory. It works really well with Skin Graft because you can get 2 fat AoEs. That's the best way to use it. But Whirlwind, staple, excellent skill. Bullhorn / Bull Rush and Blitz Attack. So with these two, Bullhorn / Rush will always do more than the Blitz Attack. So if the enemies are in a line, it will always make sense to do the Bull Rush first, because you obviously want to maximize your damage. Only times where it makes sense to blitz is, let's say you're stood where Beast is here, there's an enemy here, and there's an enemy here. This will allow you to blitz from one target to the other, and also reposition at the same time. But it's really nice to use from high ground. It's really nice to get to targets above you, but that's pretty tricky for this skill most of the time. But yeah, it makes sense. Like, if it's possible to hit multiple targets, you go with the Bull Rush. If not, you'll be going Blitz Attack. But you'll rarely be finding yourself needing to use Blitz Attack, honestly. In terms of the other skills that you could end up using during the game, you could end up using Fortify, Bone Cage. I personally avoid Bone Cage. or I would recommend avoiding it because of what I said about the whole water rush thing and getting death wish. And you just don't need the armor, as I've already stated. If you're dealing enough damage, killing, you don't need armor. You don't need health. so yeah, there's that. Fortified does the same job pretty much. But as you can see, we've literally learned nothing besides the skills that I've kind of gone over already. Onslaught, just absolutely amazing single target damage. As you can see there, we just popped like 10k damage or so. Probably like 11k, probably a bit more maybe. And that is with a level 16 character. So, and I mean, I guess I don't know if my gear is absolutely optimal, but yeah. So yeah, I can get some pretty ridiculous damage out on single targets as well. So the only thing like I really want to sort of touch on here now is how to approach fights. I'd probably say the warrior is the simplest of them all. But yeah, let's just say, in terms of getting your optimal damage off, let's say Cranley Hubert's alive, and we're stood where we are, and we have 7 AP. Now, to me, it would make sense to use 1 AP to move up the Hubert. We have 6 AP left, and then we do our combination. Do our combination of, you know, we could challenge. We'll set up the bullhorns. We'll do an auto attack. We'll adrenaline. We'll enrage, and then we'll do whatever. That makes sense in that situation. If we happen to have 6 AP and we're stood where we are, it makes sense. Instead of moving up, we would then do bullhorns instead. So we've effectively moved, but we've still done damage whilst moving, so it makes a lot more sense. And then we would adrenaline, enrage, all that other good stuff then on after. So you're just being efficient with your damage, and you're playing with what you have available to you. Let's take a fight, for example. Let's say Lady Vengeance fight on the ship, where we're stood too far away from using bullhorns, and we're stood too far away to run. So 7 AP, it will make sense to use the Phoenix Dive on top of the enemies. So yeah, we just said we jump into position where the grouped enemies are, and then yeah, we can do whatever we want to do at that point. Again, same combination though. And I suppose if we were in the same situation as I just mentioned, we have, let's say we have 6 AP. Again, we can't attack and get in, and it's too far to run. We can always Phoenix Dive in. We're on 5 AP. We could use Corpse Explosion as an idea. That's 1 AP, and then we can go adrenaline, enrage, blah 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 blah. So in order for you to like put out maximum damage, it really depends on the situation which you need to identify. And I mean, even you could even if you had with the Corpse Explosion, that's an idea. You jump in with your 5 AP. You could even just all in. with the 3 AP. You know, it really just depends. Like all in's a pretty weak attack, to be fair, but sometimes that extended little bit of damage will make the difference. But yeah, it ultimately just depends on the situation, and you need to figure out, okay, how much AP do I have? Can I get in range to attack them? Can I get in range to use 1 AP? Basically what you're really trying to do is like get into a position, either buffed, where you can keep your AP at an even amount, because your basic attacks all cost 2 AP, so you want to keep it as flat as possible, and the odd spare 1 AP here and there doesn't carry over if you're using glass cannon. So yeah, that is just how I would that's how I would look at playing the warrior. That's how I view it. You don't need a lot of utility. You as you probably noticed, I've not included teleport or anything like that. I leave that to the other party members. So the summoner has teleports, the necromancer has teleports. So yeah, the warrior, I've not needed it at all. Though if you're in a position like I'm in here, I mean, you could always go grab Never Swap, but I wouldn't go out my way to get it. It's just part of this gear, but I wouldn't go out my way to get it, because there's again something else that I see people recommending, like get teleport and Never Swap on all your characters, and I'm just thinking it's overly excessive. You don't need that many characters with it. It's only gonna reduce your damage because you're putting points into memory to bring it in when you don't need to. So it's not just the character build as an individual, it's the character build as part of a 4-man unit. So the utility stuff, leave to the utility characters and just focus on getting as much damage as possible, because I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's absolutely true. Damage is king in this game. It is the be-all and end-all. Anyways, guys, I think I pretty much just touched on everything that you really need to know about the warrior, how to approach the warrior, how to build the warrior, the gear and stuff that you should be looking for. So hopefully this will be of some great use to you guys, and Riverlon will be a safer place. But as for now, I'm out. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next one.